Welcome to Things I Think for 16 September 2020. Uh, it's supposed to be hard. My good friend Mark Strand in Washington, D.C. sent me a movie clip the other day that summed up better than I had the whole idea of good things are supposed to be hard. It was a rephrase of Thomas Paine's famous quote, "Heaven knows how to put a proper price on its goods," as Albert King said in the blues song, everybody wants to get to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Um, Valuable things aren't easy. That's what makes them valuable. So Mark, thank you for the link. And folks, if you click on the link in the written version, you'll be taken to a clip that references baseball, which is always a good thing. How to spread the word by doing. A longtime listener and fan, Justin Savail in Australia, recently took an interim role. He made such an impression that one of his directs, a direct report, Deborah Wadsworth, wrote to me to describe what it's like to work for a Manager Tools manager. Dear Mark, I wanted to reach out to you, relay my experience over the last few months that has led me to Manager Tools. Over my career, I think my exposure to good managers has been quite limited. Lots of nice and some not so nice people, but not great managers. However, Justin Savail, whom I believe you know, was recently appointed our acting general manager, and his management approach has been nothing short of life-changing for me! Exclamation point. Maybe that sounds a little dramatic, but it's true. I was one of Justin's direct reports with a team of 3 under me. Justin quickly gained traction by making time for us to engage with him. It took a few weeks to gain some trust, and he definitely pushed us along to deliver for the business. There were a few instances where I felt really under pressure and I missed some deadlines. Just this week, we had a meeting about planning and prioritizing with my team, during which Justin gave me some feedback regarding how frustrating it was I had missed deadlines. It was somewhat confronting, but also hugely refreshing. Strange how a negative performance conversation has possibly been the most important business conversation I have ever had. I talked about how I have struggled with prioritizing both my tasks and across my direct reports, and he gave me some suggestions for management resources, including Manager Tools. I started listening to your Basics podcast just this week, and they have been amazing. I've started with the Management Basics, and I've already had a monumental mindset shift from the start of the week. I started with the Delegation podcast, and there were some big learnings I've already taken away from this. As a newish manager, I'd always felt a little guilty assigning my directs additional tasks, or in your world, balls to juggle. Game-changing moment when I realized how limiting this approach is, not only for my company, but for myself as a manager. I've just subscribed for a personal license, and I'm deeply excited about progressing through the materials and growing my skills. I've only been listening to podcasts for a week and feel like I've already learned so much. I'm literally jumping out of the bed in the morning, ready to soak up another episode. So in sum, thanks for creating such a fantastic resource, not only from my perspective as a developing manager, but also from the side of a direct report. I feel so fortunate to have a manager such as Justin who has taken time to learn the tools and apply them in their roles. Kind regards, Deborah Wadsworth. Folks, literally jumping out of bed in the morning. That's the kind of impact you can have on someone in your org. Ignore the micromanagement whiners. They're wrong. Make a difference in the lives of others. And Deborah, I will remember your note forever. And Justin, well done, sir. If you're going to train, do it right. When we provide training to companies, we come on site to train your team, or we do it over Zoom. It's a familiar model, except that when we leave, I worry, I know our work isn't really truly done. The team, your team, is still learning. They have questions. They need support after the fact. We're always looking for ways to help managers implement the Trinity. That's especially true now that the podcast has made it possible for anyone to get access to it. That's why we created Roadmap. For the last year or so, we've been providing Roadmap as part of post-training support. The fact is, companies are good at buying training. The process of engaging an outside trainer is known in HR and accounts payable. Every org has a process, and orgs follow their process. The problem is that what organizations want is not training. What they want is the behavior change they assume is going to happen afterwards. Whomever you engage to train your folks on whatever you want them trained on, whether it's our stuff or not, it doesn't matter. Don't just measure the trainer or the experience. Spend the time beforehand to decide what you're going to measure after the training. And then that means you'll have to measure it before. And the change in that measure is where the value is for you. A word about culture. I have said many, many times that culture in an organization is overrated. I think I mentioned it last week tangentially, some company trying to do something clever to create their culture. Bad idea. Several of you have written to me surprised by this because you have discovered that Peter Drucker, my management thinking hero, is famous for having said culture eats strategy for breakfast. One of you wrote in and said, I know Drucker can't be wrong, but that means Mark is wrong. Ah! I thought that was hilarious. The fact is, we're both right. Culture absolutely eats strategy for breakfast. If you have a culture of effectiveness, even if your strategy is wrong, you're going to make some traction. If you're a strategy person and you got a great strategy, but you don't implement it, you're not going to do well. What I have been saying is not that culture is not important. It is. I totally get that it is. My point has always been that what passes for culture in the world of management and HR thinking and writing and talking these days is not culture. Culture is just the sum total of all the behaviors in your organization. We like to put fancy words around it, but it's not that. To label something when it in fact is not that thing is not accurate. Drucker wasn't saying that HR or ER or some external consulting firm can create some initiatives for you or an event for you so that you can create a culture. You can't create culture. You can't create it. Culture is a result, not an activity. You sure as hell can't import it or buy it or bring it in. Drucker also meant that he assumed everyone knew what he meant by the right culture, results, effectiveness, and a concern at all times for people. Watch what people do. That's culture. Doesn't happen at parties or in icebreakers or any other event. If you have to plan it, it's not culture. Culture is doing, culture is behaviors. Culture is like the difference between what we say our priorities are and what our calendars prove that they actually are. I don't think I've ever had, maybe one, I don't think I've ever had an executive coaching client whose stated priorities to me matched their actual calendar. That's the difference between calling something something and the thing actually being that something. Mission first, people always. That's culture. See you tomorrow.